So good morning, guys. So to have a quick recollect of what we discussed yesterday. So yesterday we started with understanding the architecture of the Hadoop. So within the Hadoop architecture, so we understand what are the different services that are going to be run when we say Hadoop cluster is up and running, right? So Hadoop at a very high level has a two core components. One is a HDFS and one is a MapReduce. And for the HDFS to work, we needed three services like a name node service, secondary name node service, okay, and another one will be data node service. And for the MapReduce to work, we need to have a resource manager service, node manager service, and job history service should be run. Okay, if you look at this, most of the distributed computing architectures or most of the distributed frameworks, they follow master slave architecture. Master slave architecture. That means if you look at these services, one of the service will work as a master. Let's say in HDFS, name node is a master service or manager service, and data node or data nodes will be the worker services. And if you look at the MapReduce, the resource manager is the master service or manager service, and node manager will be the worker services. Right. So when you have multiple entities that are running as a to accomplish the same task, we need someone to coordinate them. We need someone to control them. We need someone to direct, or we need someone to give some work to them. So the master services will be doing that activity. Okay. Now all these services what we have seen, so these services will be all or nothing but a Java code. So they are nothing as a Java process continuously in the background. So that's why they are called as the services. Now, based on how these services are running, where these are running, we can make Hadoop can be configured in the three modes. One is the local mode, pseudo distributed mode, and a fully distributed mode. In fully distributed mode, these services will be scattered across multiple nodes in the cluster or multiple servers in the cluster, right? So if you see here, if you take this as a 6 node Hadoop cluster, your name node is running in one system, resource manager is running one system, and secondary name node is running in another system, right? If you consider these as the manager nodes. And if you look at the worker nodes, so on the worker nodes, the data node services will be running on all the nodes. Similarly, a node manager service will be running all the nodes. So this can be like a fully distributed Hadoop cluster, right? Now, when we say pseudo distributed Hadoop cluster, so last one we saw the pseudo distributed Hadoop cluster. So if it is a pseudo distributed Hadoop cluster, what happens, right? Everything will run in the same within the same node. That means within a you can consider a pseudo distributed Hadoop cluster as a one node Hadoop cluster. Where within that system, all the services like name node, secondary name node, data node, resource manager, node manager, all will be running. They will be running as a different process, right? What are the features of the Hadoop that work on a fully distributed mode? Those features will work on the pseudo distributed mode also. So we can use a pseudo distributed mode for our learning purpose or lab purpose or to do any small POCs. Okay. And next one we have is the local mode. In this local mode, what happens, right? All these entities will run as a single process. You cannot differentiate as a name node, secondary node, data node, resource manager node, job history server. All of them will run as a single Java process. And the file system it uses here will be the local file system itself. What are the portion of hard disk that your operating system will be using, right, to store the local files? The same portion of the hard disk will be used as a your file system of the Hadoop in the local mode. So there are some features that are not supported in the local mode. So we'll not be using the local mode in our like at a industry level. But as a learners, if you want to write some small programs and you want to quickly run them, debug them, we can run them in the local mode. Just to do some unit testing, some sort of this, we can use a local mode. Okay, so these are the different configurations of the Hadoop that we can set up. Okay, now today we will go into the other details like what is the role of a name node, what is the role of a data node, what is the role of a resource manager, node manager, all these entities one by one. Okay, okay. So name node, what it will do. Name node is responsible for maintaining the metadata. So name node maintains, you can say this is a master service. Okay, so this is a master service of HDFS. Okay, it maintains the HDFS metadata. That means the data that is stored on the HDFS, all those metadata it will maintain. Right? It is responsible for, like, it will monitor the HDFS. Okay, so it monitors HDFS space utilization. How much space is available on HDFS, right? All these details will be monitored. Okay, so the name node will make okay, try to replicate the blocks which are under replicated. It replicates, okay, it keeps track of under replicated blocks and makes them. So under replicated blocks means, let's say I have written a one file, right? So in that one file, let's say this block 3 is available in data node 4, data node 1 and the data node 2. Now when the node 4 went down, right, what happens? We are losing one copy of block 3, one copy of block 2, one copy of the block 1. So we are losing these copies, right? So as per the Hadoop configuration, each block has to be replicated 3 times. There should be 3 copies of the blocks. But there are, for a block B1, B2 and B3, when node 4 went down, we have only 2 copies of them available in the cluster, right? So now name node will get to know about this. How will get to know? I will tell in a couple of minutes. So the name node will get to know about this, and it will ask, it will pass instructions to one of these data nodes to find, okay, to replicate the blocks by copying from the nodes that are available. Let's say this B3 is available in node 1. Okay, so now it may ask the node 3 to fetch this B3 from the node 1 and have a one copy in it. So now we have 3 blocks of B3 available now, right? So whichever the blocks that are under replicated, Okay, the name node will keep tracks of them and makes them replicated again. In simple terms, like a name node will be performing the bookkeeping activities of HDFS, right? And it also makes the data again highly available with this feature. So because it is replicated in the blocks which are under replicated, so this makes us the data highly available to us, right? And the second thing is it will also performs, okay, checking the validating the checksum of the blocks. Okay, I can say it performs validating the checksum of the HDFS file blocks. Okay, this is important. So whatever the data we have written to any file system, two things we need to consider. Is my data highly available? And second thing is whatever the data has stored on the file system, is it reliable? So we are copying a huge volumes of data, 10 GB files, 5 GB files, 2 GB files. It may take some time to write to the HDFS. How do you ensure, or how the Hadoop framework will ensure that data that is written to the HDFS is not corrupted? Okay, is not corrupted data. That is a concept of reliability. So how do you assure that the data that is stored on the HDFS is reliably stored? So in order to do that, in order to assure the reliability of the data stored on the HDFS, what the name node will perform is it will perform the validating the checksum of the HDFS blocks. Now, what is a checksum? Right? So checksum is a concept of generating some unique number, okay, based on the volume of data. Right? Let's say, for example, there are two servers, server A and server B. Server A is sending one file to the server B. How server A can send a file to the server B? So this data, whatever the file that is going to be sending from server A to server B, it has to go through network. The data has to pass through the network before it reaches the server B. Now, while the data is in the transit, like it is being transferred to the network, there can be some chance some data, let's say some data packets might be lost or some correction can happen. Or when the server B received the whole data, while writing it, okay, it can happen some correction of hazard, maybe some hard disk fail or some sort of something has happened, right? At these two places, there can be a chance that your data can go for corruption. Now, how do we ensure whatever the data that server A has sent is received intact at the server B, right? For this, what the server A will do, right? So if you take a file, let's say that file through the network will be sent as a data packets, some sort of that, right? For each payload or for each data packet, it will generate one unique number. Now, whenever the data is sent across the network, it will send the header also. It will send the payload, a data payload, and it will send the header also. Within the header, so there will be one number, one checksum number for this data packet, for this volume of data. This is a unique number. Now, the server B, after receiving this data, it again computes the checksum. So there will be some algorithms will be there. how to perform that checksum. Okay, now with that checksum, whatever the server A has sent the checksum, whatever the server B has computed the checksum, both this checksum should match, should be equal for a given payload of data. If it is equal, then it is reliable that it is, we can say the data is received without any corruption. The same thing happens with respect to the HDFS blocks also. So this concept, when you look at the HDFS read write option, at that time I will mention about this. So as of now, just like remember that name node is responsible for storing the data reliably. How it can perform is, it can perform it, how it can do that is, it validates the checksum of the HDFS blocks in a periodic intervals of time. Okay, so here what happens is, actually the data nodes are the one which are having these blocks of data, and the name node has a metadata. So for this file, let's say this sales underscore 2020.csv file, which is a 1 GB file, that is returned to the HDFS. Once the client has written that 1 GB file or this file to the HDFS, okay, so the name node will be given the metadata. The client itself will send the metadata to the name node, saying this is a file, these are the blocks, these are the blocks where they are replicated, and this is a checksum of each of the file. So that will be available in the metadata. Now these data nodes, wherever these HDFS blocks are stored, these data nodes, they will be sending some signals to the name node. Okay, we call them as a heartbeat signals. When they're sending the heartbeat signals, in every 10th cycle of the heartbeat signals, these data nodes will be sending a block report information. The data nodes will be sending a block report information, saying that if say this is a node 5 and a data node service is running on this node 5, this data node will send information, the block report information to the name node, saying I have a block B1 and this is a checksum of this, and I have a block B2, this is a checksum of this, and I have the block B4, this is a checksum of this. So this information it will send it to the name node. The name node already have this information. Now it go and validate it. So whether the block report information given by data node 5 is okay correct or not. Okay, if it is correct, then the data is intact. Right now, what happens? The data node 4 also supposed to send the heartbeat signals, and it's supposed to send the block report information also. But the data node 4 is not sending. Why? Because let's say there is some failure in the system, some power cut, or some hard disk issue, or some system got hacked, or some sort of things, or the service, the data node service itself is went down. Some sort of failure happened in this. Now, what happens? There is no block report information that is coming from node 4 to the name node. But the name node has an information in the node 4, there's supposed to be a block B1, B2, and B3. Now this node 4 information is not receiving, right? The name node will now get to know, okay, block 1, block 2, block 3, I got only 2 replicas. Okay, one replica is missing them because node 4 is not responding. So this name node will assume that okay, this node 4 went down, it is decommissioned, there is some potential problem with that, right? So like this, the name node will be getting to know which blocks are under replicated. Okay, and name node will be getting to know the block report information from these data nodes to validate the checksum and ensure that the data is highly available on HDFS and the data is reliably stored on HDFS. Okay, and whenever you perform any read write operation, in fact you perform any of the activity with HDFS, the request will go to the name node. If you are writing a data to HDFS, the request will go to the name node. When you are reading the data from the HDFS, the request also will go to the name node, because this is a master for the HDFS and all the metadata information will be there with the name node. Okay, any doubts so far? Are we clear with the name node roles and responsibilities? Does any doubts so far? Is it clear? Yes, I'm audible.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we are good. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Okay. Next, another thing this name node service will be doing is this name node metadata will be available in a FS image. And whenever we restart these services, the name node will load the metadata from FS image into the memory. So I can say loads FS image, okay, from memory. Okay, so whenever say for some maintenance or some sort of things, we need to stop the systems. Let's say Hadoop cluster is set up. After a few days, there is some security patch needs to be applied. And whenever we are applying some security patch, so let's say it requires a rebooting the system. So Hadoop administrator, what he will do, he will send a mail message or mail to the people who are using Hadoop cluster saying there will be some maintenance of the cluster or scheduled maintenance or monthly maintenance or some security patch related maintenance for the cluster. So during this time to this time, your Hadoop cluster will not be available, and the Hadoop cluster will be set to a in a safe mode. In a safe mode, we cannot write the data to the HDFS. So we need to plan to run our jobs accordingly as per his communication. Now, within the time window, they will apply some patches. They will restart the systems. Let's say if it's required to restart the systems. So whenever you are restarting system, right, the name node services will be stopped, and again it is started. Now, when the name node service starts again, where is the metadata of your Hadoop cluster? Remember, the metadata, the name node keeps the metadata in the RAM. When the Hadoop cluster is up and running, the name node will keep the metadata in the RAM. If it is keeping in a file, right, and when you're dealing with a huge volume of data, and for each volume and for each file, we are writing like a hundreds to thousands of blocks of data. Every time reading this information from the file will be a time-taking activity. That's why, okay, the name node will keep the metadata within the RAM so that we can fastly access the information. But now since the system is rebooted, you know RAM is a volatile memory. Okay, so whatever the metadata information we have in the RAM is lost. Now when the system is rebooted, now when my cluster service, Hadoop cluster services are restarted again we need to get the metadata. From where we can get the metadata? For that, there will be something called as an FS image. From that FS image is a file that will be created by the secondary name node, which is nothing but a backup of this metadata of the name node taken at a periodic intervals of time, and a copy of the FS image is available with the name node system also, and it will load this FS image into the RAM. So this is another activity that the name node will be performing. Okay, now let's move on to a data node. So what does a data node or data nodes will do. So generally there will be multiple data nodes in a cluster because these are the worker nodes. So the data nodes are the worker nodes of our Hadoop cluster. The data nodes are like a slave nodes. They cannot take any action by themselves. They wait to
Sorry.
be. Yeah, go ahead.
See, when you said like for any updates or something, we need to bring down the name nodes, right? So don't we have the concept of rolling updates like we have in microservices in this big data or Hadoop in order to update the name nodes or data nodes?
Some rolling updates we can do, like say when you say rolling updates, Hadoop rolling updates. So Hadoop version itself we want to update. So that can be one requirement. For that we may need to stop only services, not the entire system requires a reboot. But if you look at a operating system like a server level, operating system level, you want to apply some security patches or some sort of that, their rolling updates may not be possible. Few things may require some like a restarting the entire system. You
Okay.
got it?
Yeah.
So rolling up say two say upgrades means like a two upgrades. One, upgrading the software and upgrading the OS itself. Right? Upgrading the OS itself may require some of the things can be applied as a rolling upgrades, like without stopping any services, without stopping any services, we can update them. Or some things can be like a few services you need to stop and upgrade them. Or some services requires a complete stopping of all the services or complete rebooting of the system if you're doing something at a OS level. But something we are doing like a software level, some of the softwares we can do a rolling updates. Even for Hadoop also we can do the rolling updates, right? So when I have like a two name nodes we can have, like I mentioned, right? I'm not going through that. So I'm going with a simple 1.x architecture initially. Then we'll go to the 2.x architecture. Now I can have two name nodes. One name node I will keep as an active name node. Another name node I will keep it as a passive name node. And whenever I want to update some Hadoop software, some packages of the Hadoop in the system where the active name node is running, okay, this system I want to update for the Hadoop services. Let's say there is a name node running in this system also. Now the name node here is active and the name node service here is passive. Now we can make the name node service running in this system active and we can make this as a passive. Then we can go and update the Hadoop services like Hadoop softwares or packages here. Okay, like that
Got
we
it.
can
Yeah.
do them.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
it's possible. Yeah. So now coming back, so coming to the data node services. So what is the data node services will be do? These data node services mainly they will okay store the blocks of HDFS files. They will store HDFS blocks of data. That's what they will be doing. Okay, and they will be sending heartbeat signals to the they will be sending heartbeat signals to the master node. In this case it is a name node. They will be sending heartbeat signals to the master node. In this case this is a name node, and they will be sending block report information to the name node. So they will be periodically sending in heartbeat signals and they will be periodically sending in block report information to the name node. So now what is this heartbeat signals? Heartbeat signals are just like a ping pong signals, right? So like say in a team, we are like a team members and we are like and there is a manager. We try to fall in the eyes of the manager daily so that the manager will know that we are in office, right? Or we'll have some stand-up call or daily meeting. So everyone will be attending that meeting, right? So all the day you worked or not, sometimes people may not monitor, but are you attending the stand-up call or not, and you are giving your updates or not, is what your manager will be counting on you, right? So similarly, like the slave, it is the responsibility of the worker nodes to inform to that master that they are active, that they are alive, that they are available to take up some work. So in order to do that, these data nodes will be sending in heartbeat signals to the name node. For every 3 seconds, they will be sending one request, one signal to the name node. What the name node will do, the name node will be receiving all these heartbeat signals from all the data nodes, and the name node will, it helps the name node to track, okay, all the data nodes are available. Right. Now in this example you have seen, right? So here, if you see, after some time the cluster was set up and running, so the node 4 will not be sending an heartbeat signals to the name node. Now the name node will see for 1 or 2 cycles, and still it is not receiving a heartbeat signal from this node 4. The name node will conclude that, okay, the data node 4 is down. Okay, there is some potential problem with that, or it can be decommissioned, right? So this heartbeat signals helps to monitor the worker nodes in the Hadoop cluster, and these data nodes itself supposed to send the heartbeat signals to the name node. That is one thing. Now for every 3 seconds they will be sending the heartbeat signals. Now in the 10th cycle of these heartbeat signals, for every 10th cycle, that means for every 30 seconds, okay, these data nodes will be sending a block report information to the name node. So what that block report information includes, okay, now say this is a node 1, data node 1. The data node 1 will tell, I have a block B1 and a block B3 that belongs to so and so file, okay, with me, and this is a timestamp when this block was created, and this is a checksum on this block. So this information, okay, will be sent to the name node. Now name node already have that information. So what is this file, how many blocks are there for this file, where they are stored, and where is this checksum. Now the name node will cross check this, whatever this data node is reporting, and whatever the information it has, it is correct or not. If it is correct, then means the data is reliably available here, stored here. Okay, so whenever you want to read the data, we can contact this system to get this data, right? So this block report information will help the name node to know whether the data is reliably stored or not. Like I mentioned, when you're working with a distributed computing, distributed systems, we are expected to have failures. We should have a framework that we are using should be able to handle that, okay, automatically. Okay, now see, the name node is handling the failures of the system which are storing the data automatically. How it is doing? Based on the block report information, based on the heartbeat signals, the name node will know, okay, which are the systems that are down, and whatever the information that blocks of data stored on that data nodes, it is going to replicate to other data nodes, right? So with this design, the HDFS is a highly available file system, and the HDFS is a reliable file system. Okay, so this is about the roles of the data nodes. That's all the data nodes will do. So they just store the HDFS blocks of data. They will send in the heartbeat signals to the name node, and they will be sending the block report information to the name node. Okay. Now coming to the secondary name node. So what does a secondary name node will do? Secondary name node will take a backup of the metadata. So it creates or it takes, okay, backup. It creates backup the name nodes metadata. Okay, metadata. So this we call as a snapshot. We call as a metadata snapshot. Okay, this backup, okay, can be called as a snapshot. Okay. And the process of creating this backup, right? So this is called as a checkpointing. So it's called as a checkpointing, right? So here what happens, right? Whenever you write any data to the HDFS, the metadata will be created for the new file that is written to the HDFS, that will initially go to something called as a edit log, and data from the edit log will go to the name nodes RAM. Okay, now over a period of time we'll be writing the data, reading the data, or deleting some files, deleting some directories. So we'll be doing all these combinations, right? All these will be recorded in the edit log, and from the edit log it will be synced to the name node RAM. Now at regular intervals of time, what this secondary name node will do, right? It will connect to the name node system. It will copy the edit log file which is available at that moment, and it will initially create a one snapshot of that one. That becomes the initial FS image. Let me say that is a FS image version 1. Now after 1 hour, again the secondary name node will connect to the name node system. Now within this 1 hour, there can be some files created, there can be some files deleted, or some changes might happen in the HDFS. Again, those will be available in this edit log. Now it will take the present edit log to the secondary name node system, and there is already previously created snapshot of metadata is there, which is a FS image 1 version 1. Now it will merge this latest edit log on the previous FS image, and it will create a new FS image. That means it will create the latest snapshot of data. Okay, so that is how the secondary name node is designed to take the snapshots. And whenever the secondary name node has created an FS image, one copy of the FS image that the secondary name node will keep with itself. Okay, another copy of the FS image it will send to the name node again. So the secondary name node, whenever it creates a snapshot, it will keep one copy with it, and it will create, and it will send that another copy to the name node. So whenever we restart a name node, so from this FS image, the name node will get the whole metadata, right? So I think I should have some drawing there. So let me you see here. Now say we have like a client program. Okay, let's say here we will be writing the data. Let's say here I'm running something like a our Hadoop FS commands we are writing. Let's say in this client system, I'm doing like a Hadoop FS, like minus some blah blah blah, some command I'm running here. There on the my edge node. So here I have run this command. Okay, now whenever I return some new file, for that file, okay, we got some new metadata. Okay, in our case, we say we are writing that sales underscore 2020.csv file to the HDFS. Now this sales.csv file got 4 blocks, B1, B2, B3, B4. And again, they got some replicas. So where this each block of data is stored in 3 nodes. So the information that this is a block ID, this block with this ID is stored in these 3 nodes. This is a checksum of these blocks. When was this created? All this information is nothing but the metadata. That metadata will initially go to a file called edit log. Now, whenever the data goes to the edit log, it will be immediately synced to the RAM of the name node. Why this is syncing to the RAM? Because the whole metadata is available in the RAM of the name node. So the latest changes will first go to the edit log. From the edit log, it will sync to the RAM. Right? That's why as soon as you finish writing data to the HDFS, the data is immediately available to read it because the information is immediately going to the name node. Now, the secondary name node, what it will do, right? At a regular intervals of time, let's say every 30 minutes or every 1 hour, we can configure it. Okay, let's say every 1 hour it is configured. So every 1 hour, the secondary name node will go and fetch this edit log, and it will make a copy of the edit log, and it will create a snapshot. During the second hour, right, again it will connect to the name node, fetches this edit log. Okay, now it will combine this previous FS image and the current edit log and create the new FS image. And this process will be keep on repeating every 1 hour, like whatever the duration we have set in the Hadoop configuration files. And once the secondary name node has created FS image, it will keep one copy of that FS image within the system, and one copy of this FS image will be sent to the name node. So this is my name node system. This is sent to the name node. Now, for some reason, whenever we restarted this name node system, or whenever we restarted this name node service, or whenever we restarted this entire server, right? Whenever we are restarting the name node again, the name node will be aware of this FS image location, and it will copy the content of this FS image to the RAM, so that the entire metadata is again now available here in the RAM. Now, whenever you start querying the HDFS, right, whenever you run Hadoop FS commands, so the request will go to the name node, and the name node can immediately give the responses. We can immediately give the information about the data that is stored on the your HDFS. Okay, so this is how the edit log, the FS image, a snapshot, okay, or the entire process called as a checkpointing. This process will happen. Okay, is it clear on this checkpointing and what is the role of the secondary name node? Any doubts so far? Are we good? This like first few classes, right? It will make it theoretical because you are altogether learning a completely new framework. It will be some theory will be there. Okay, then keep on. We'll get the practicals, all these things. Okay, so just bear me for the first couple of days with the theory. Okay, are you good so far? Any doubts?
It's all right.
All right. Thanks, Ajit. Okay, now this is the what your secondary name node will be doing. So basically, secondary name node will be performing a checkpointing as a So checkpointing is nothing but creating a snapshot of the metadata. So the snapshot will serve as a backup of your metadata. Okay, remember one thing, your secondary name node is not a hard standby to the name node. So by the name, we think like, okay, this is a name node. Let's say our understanding or perception may go like, okay, this can be the primary name node and this is a secondary name node. So we have two name nodes, and of course the secondary name node is taking a backup, and whenever this name node, let's say I call it a primary name node for now, primary name node goes down, the secondary name node will not assume the role of the primary name node, right? So remember, it is not a hot standby to the name node. That means whenever name node goes down, the secondary name node will not assume the role of the name node. It will not assume that. Okay, the secondary name node will not become a your name node, right? In a case like where, say, this system went down, where we have name node service that is running active, and we have a copy of the FS image here. Let's say the entire system went down. It's not at all reachable, hard disk problem, something. In that case, what we need to do, right?
కెనడియన్ది ఉంది అంట.
Guys, please go on mute.
మనకు పంపించదు అనుకున్నాను, కానీ ఎస్ఎస్ పంపిస్తుంది కెనడియన్, ఆమెనే చెప్పింది. ఒక ప్లేస్ నుంచి మాకు వస్తాయి, అది ఓన్లీ యూఎస్ వస్తే అసలు కెనడియన్ రావు అని చాలా నన్ను తీసేయమంది ఒక లైన్.
Guys, can you mute Sharmila? Sharmila, don't mind, can you go on mute? Okay. Yeah, no problem. I think Ramu, yeah, I'm hearing some noise. Please go on mute, guys, don't mind. Okay, so now come back. So now let's say this entire system went down where our name node service was running, and let's say we have a data node service was also running. Now there is no name node to the cluster. Whenever there is a no name node, we cannot access your HDFS. The name node was a single point of failure in our Hadoop 1.x architecture. Okay, so if the name node goes down, you don't know which blocks are stored where. For a given file, where are the blocks are there, where are the replicas are there, where all are replicated, where all these are reliably stored. All this information we are losing, right? And there is no automatic failure of handling the name node in the Hadoop 1.x version. If you want to do that, like if the system is not coming up, there is like a strong damage to the system, then Hadoop admins has to manually identify some other system, copy the FS image from the secondary name node to that system, and start the name node services again. Or since we have the FS image here itself, in this system itself we can start the name node services, so that at this moment temporarily this system can serve as both a secondary name node and a name node. But this kind of thing we never do, because again for some reason this system goes down, we have the entity which is taking the backup, that is also there in the same system, and the entity which is a master, that is also there in the same system. If the system goes down, the entire metadata will be losing. So that's why the secondary name node process will be definitely running in a separate system, and the name node process will be running in a separate system. Okay, but from the Hadoop 2.x onwards, we have some concept called name node high availability. Okay, that name node high availability we'll discuss a little later. So let's finish these things. Okay, so now from this we can say the secondary name node will be performing a checkpointing. Checkpointing is nothing but a process of taking a backup of the name node metadata, okay, which we can call as a snapshot also. That means secondary name node will be creating a FS images. We can tell like that also. It will be creating the FS images. FS images, file system images. Which file system is the HDFS image? HDFS file system image. Image is nothing but the content what is stored on the information. So metadata is nothing but information about information. Your actual data is information, and the data is like a divided into small pieces and written. And we need to have a information about these blocks. So this is the information about the information. That's why it is called as a metadata, right? And this we call as a FS image. This is a file system image. So the secondary name node will be creating the FS image, and the secondary name node is not a hard standby to the name node. That means whenever the name node goes down, the secondary name node will not automatically assume the role of the name node. Okay, for some reason when people are given these names, okay, so the developers of this Hadoop may not be thought, but like initially, like when I have taken so many classes, right? So many people initially they will get confused. Okay, we have a name node and a secondary name node, and during very initial days of the Hadoop, right? Hadoop interface, this is one of the common questions that used to ask. What is the secondary name node? What is the role of the secondary name node? The secondary name node is a hot standby to the name node. So whenever the name node goes down, can secondary name node assume the role of the name node? Okay, so there are some questions that were coming out of the secondary name. So nowadays people are not that much asking. Okay, so this is about the purpose of the roles and responsibilities of the secondary name. Okay, so now we have another thing called as a resource manager, and we have something called as a node manager. So I will just brief over resource manager now. Then we will go into the details of the resource manager later when we are discussing about the MapReduce. So we have a resource manager process, right? This resource manager is responsible for managing the resources in the cluster. Managing the resources is nothing but managing the worker nodes. And what are the worker nodes to this resource manager? The node managers are the node managers are the worker nodes. And the name confuses here, like why they are given the name as they say here. If you go, I have told there are worker nodes, and the worker node systems, there is a data node process that will be running and a node manager process will be running, and these are called as a manager nodes or the management nodes or the master nodes, and these are called as the worker nodes. But when you come to this node manager, right, so they are given a name called as a manager here, so which is sometimes confusing to the people, but don't get confused. The node managers are the worker nodes only, and the data nodes also are the worker nodes. Okay, so earlier these node managers, they're called as a task trackers. Okay, and this resource manager, it is called as a job tracker. Okay, so but now from Hadoop 2.x onwards, these are called as a resource manager and the node manager. Okay, so let me put that one. We want to talk about this resource manager and the node manager, right? So first let's talk about Hadoop 1.x architecture. So nowadays no one is using the Hadoop 1.x, but we being students, we should understand how the things are evolved. Now let me put into Hadoop 1.x. Okay, and Hadoop 2.x onwards. Okay, in Hadoop 1.x, so we have some entities called a job tracker entity and task tracker entity. So these are the services we have. So we have a job tracker and we have a task tracker. Okay, here the job tracker is the master and the task tracker are the worker nodes. There is in Hadoop 2.x, right? we have something called as a resource manager and the node manager. Okay, so why we have these entities like this, right? In Hadoop 1.x, there was some faulty design. So to correct that faulty design, in Hadoop 2.x, the MapReduce part has been completely rewritten. Okay, and when they completely rewritten, okay, so they renamed the services as a resource manager and the node manager. Okay, now let me put it here. What does a job tracker will do? So job tracker in Hadoop 1.x, it is responsible for resource management. It is responsible for resource management. So what are the resources to the job tracker? The task trackers are the resources. So it is to manage these resources. So in what terms you want to manage these resources? So whenever you're running a job, right? So we need to allocate some workers to that job, right? So in a distributed computing, that is what we are doing, right? So in order to accomplish one job, we are making use of the multiple resources, okay, multiple people, right? So here, and this job tracker has to assign, okay, some work to a to the task trackers. I have to use some task tracker to accomplish a task, to accomplish the job. So that means the job tracker is basically using the resources on the task trackers. It's like a memory, okay, and other stuff. So that's why it is called as a resource management. So the job trackers are doing the resource management, and the resources of the task track of the job tracker are coming from the task trackers. And this job tracker is responsible for scheduling the jobs. Scheduling the jobs. What jobs? Like your MapReduce jobs, right? So now I have taken a Hadoop cluster, and there are 10 MapReduce jobs, Hadoop jobs that are submitted. You should have enough resources to run all the 10 Hadoop jobs, right? Some jobs may take a long time, some jobs may take a less time, some jobs may take more resources, some jobs may take less resources, right? Let's say all the 10 jobs may not be run at a time in the Hadoop cluster, right? So we need to take care of when to start a job and which jobs to give priority. There's some rules or some conditions we need to follow. So that is called as a scheduling. So the job tracker will schedule the jobs. It will perform the job scheduling. So a job tracker is doing the resource management, and also, okay, it take care of job execution. Okay, takes care of, or I can say coordinates job execution. It will coordinates the job execution. That means it will handle the job execution. So whenever you're running some Hadoop job, when I say MapReduce job, okay, so splitting the work into multiple small tasks, assigning those tasks to the task trackers, monitoring the task trackers whether they completed that work or not. All these things comes under job coordination. Like within a team, you need a team leader, right? What will be team leader will be doing? He will be coordinating with the team. He will be coordinating with the team members. So whenever some work comes from the project manager, the team lead will get the work, and the team lead will, okay, create a multiple tasks out of that work, and he will assign that work to the individual team members, and the team lead has to coordinate within them, so how they are performing those tasks. Same in a distributed computing environment, we need a one coordinator, okay, which can coordinate with the resources or the worker nodes.
One question.
These are task trackers. Yes, please.
Uh, how this understand that which member is handling what kind of request and how the work is evenly getting distributed to the resources?
So that is the role of the job tracker. So this job tracker itself will be taking care of that. Okay, how it will get to know, right? So like say, let's go with analogy. I have a team of 20 members and I'm the team lead in my project. I know my resources, the 20 peoples, let's say everyone is available, no one is going on a vacation. I know their skill set, right? I know how they can work them, right? Like I know what work they're currently doing. So some people may have a less work, some people may have a more work. All these things somewhere we'll be tracking. Let's say in Excel sheet, or nowadays most of the people are using a agile process. They're following a Jira boards on the Scrum boards. They have a tickets assigned, right? All this. So by looking, I have some information. Being a lead, I know how busy the my team is, right? Now, whenever some new work comes, as a team lead, I will assign that work to the particular team members, like who have a less less work or who have a bandwidth to take care of this. Same thing happens within the Hadoop environment also, right? Now, when you say resources here, now say we're talking about the task tracker as a resources. Assume that within a Hadoop cluster, there is a 10 node workers are there, 10 worker nodes are there. In all the 10 worker nodes, the task tracker process will be running, right? Now, basically, in the same systems, we have some block of data. Let's say, for example, here, okay, I need to process this data. When I want to process this data, this 1 GB of data, I want to take B1, B3, B2, B4, and I want to process, right? Now, I will, this is my data node system. And the same data node system, we know that there is a task tracker, task tracker process also running, right? Now, the resource manager will assign a work to the task tracker here to take a block B1 of data and apply some logic. But why the task tracker has decided to give that work to the why the job tracker has decided to give that work to the task tracker one only, because the job tracker will be aware that at a given point of time whether the task tracker has a bandwidth to run a new task or not. So that's as a all these things are part of the Hadoop framework. Did you get Ajit?
Oh yeah, yeah, that's clear. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So there is
Yeah.
there is a algorithms inbuilt algorithm which basically keep tracks that which resource has been laden with what sort of work.
Correct.
Yeah.
See,
Okay.
yeah. So like the name node will have the details of the data nodes, right, through the ping pong request block report information. So these task trackers also will be sending their heartbeat signals to the job tracker. So with that information, the job tracker will know at a given point of time how many task trackers are up and running and how many are available. Point number one. And whenever you want to process a data, like whenever you want to process one block of information, we know that we need memory because this block is there on the physical hard disk. If you want to process this, you have to load this block into the memory, and what are the logics we have written, let's say some Java code or something, we need to create an objects in the heap memory. So we need some memory to process, to apply some logic on this block B1. So that memory is what we call as a container. So the task trackers will give containers to perform the tasks, right? And how many containers a task tracker can give, that depends on the how much memory RAM that is available on the each of the task tracker mission. And as per Hadoop configurations, what is the container size we are defining. right? Now let's say I have a 64 GB of RAM within each system. Out of the 64 GB of RAM, let's say 32 GB of RAM I'm leaving aside, considering that is required for the operating system to run some services. Now let's say 32 GB of RAM I can use for as a containers to run the Hadoop jobs. Now each container size is, let's say, 1 GB. Now 32 divided by 1, so I can get 32 containers I can get. So when I have 32 containers, at a time I can run 32 tasks on one data node. Now I got a 10 task tracker systems. On each task tracker, I can get a 32 containers. So 32 into 10, total 320 containers I can have. So with the 320 containers, okay, the total availability containers is 320. Now I submitted a 10 jobs at a time on the Hadoop cluster. Now assume that the first three jobs which were submitted, they're consuming all these 320 containers. Now there are no free containers available to take up the new work. Then what will happen? So out of 10 jobs I submitted, 3 jobs got the resource allocated, they're executing. Meanwhile, the remaining 7 jobs will go into a queue state. They go into queue. And currently there are 7 jobs in the queue and 3 jobs that are actively running. Now out of 3 jobs, let's say 1 job has finished within the 5 minutes and it has released some containers. Now these containers can be used for the upcoming job in the queue. So now who will take care of this job scheduling, this resource assignment, right? All these things will be taken care by the job tracker. Now how this job getter get to know this means, like the data nodes are sending their heartbeat signals and they're sending their block report information to the name node. The task trackers also, they will be sending their heartbeat signals to the job tracker, and they will be sending the task progress information also to the job tracker once they assign a tasks, right? Now at any given point of time, the job tracker will know how many task trackers are available on the cluster through the heartbeat signals, point number 1. And for some of the task trackers, some work is assigned. So these task trackers will be giving that information to the job tracker. So I have a 32 containers. Among 32 containers, let's say 5 containers I'm using. In these 5 containers, 5 tasks are running. Okay, and remaining, let's say 27 containers are freely available with me. So such kind of information the task trackers will be sending to the job tracker. Now the job tracker will gather all this information, and whenever a new job has submitted, or if there is any job waiting in the queue, okay, the job tracker will assign the new containers to the new upcoming job in the queue. So this is how it happens within the framework. Is it clear?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Hari. Thank you very
No
much.
problem,
Yeah.
Ajit. Yeah. Okay. We are going step by step. Okay, but don't stop asking questions. Okay. So what we need to do, right? This is altogether a completely new framework, and again it is a distributed framework. There are so many new entities are there. First we will go like a pieces by pieces. Then we'll stitch all these pieces together. Then you will get the complete picture. Okay. Okay. So now these are the responsibilities of the job tracker. It is doing the resource management. It is responsible for scheduling the jobs. It is responsible for coordinating the job execution, and also it is responsible for providing the job history also. It is responsible to provide the job history. So job history means in its name only it is there. So since all these are the distributed jobs we are running, right? So when the job is running, sometimes we may not get the information. So there are multiple entities involved in executing your job, right? So all this information that has each of the task tracker has a shared, it will, the job tracker will collect it, consolidate it, and keep it as a separate files. And there is a one utility, like one web page created for that, and whenever you give that web page URL, then you can see, so this is a job ID, this is a job name, so these are the logs for this job. So that what called as a job history. So when we run some job, I will show you the job history. And whenever we are want to get the job history, again the request is going to the job tracker only. So this in Hadoop 1.x, the job tracker is performing, the job tracker is performing so many activities like resource management, scheduling the jobs, coordinating the jobs execution, and providing the job history. Since this job tracker is doing all these activities, it has become a heavy process. Heavy process means, so this process requires more memory, because it has to keep track of all the task trackers. It has to keep track of the task progress information stated by the task trackers. It has to provide the job history. It has to coordinate the job execution. It has to take care of the job scheduling. All these requires some information, right? And this information will be stored in the RAM, like our name node is storing the metadata in the RAM. Now, because the job tracker is taking more of this work, it requires a more memory. Sorry, it requires a more memory. So as such, the job tracker has become a heavy process. And if you take any good framework, good design, we should we have to we should not have heavy process in a framework. What will happen? Now say, if some people are like for some reason we keep on requesting the job tracker to provide the job history. So it will be busy in providing this job history and all. Because of this, some other services can be affected. Or because it is using the same memory for all these things, what happened, right? If any memory leak or memory hang has happened, right? So this will impact the other things also. So it will keep on giving the more job history. It is loading all this information to the RAM, and we need some information to store in the RAM for the resource management, job scheduling, and job coordination. But for that, there is no enough memory in the RAM. So at that time, what happens? Either the things will slow down, or the things may fail, or the things may time out, right? So it's not good to have a heavy process in any of the framework. So that is what they have corrected in the Hadoop 2.x. So in the Hadoop 2.x, what they have done, right? They have divided the work of the job tracker, right? So now this resource management and scheduling the jobs, these two things will be done by the resource manager. So the resource manager will perform the resource management and the job scheduling. And they have created a separate service called as the job history server. They created a separate thing as a job history server, and you know why, what it will do. It provides the job history. So now whenever you request for a job history, the request will not go to the resource manager. The request will go to the job history server. So they decoupled it, because it's not necessary, right? So they decoupled this one, right? And here we have a node manager, and this node manager will be same as the task tracker only. So what does a task tracker will do here? So the task tracker here, okay, it will execute the tasks. So task tracker attempts the tasks given by job tracker. So the job tracker attempts the tasks given by the job tracker. And like data nodes, these task trackers, they will be sending heartbeat signals. They will be sending heartbeat signals to the job tracker. Because being a worker node, it is their responsibility to send their heartbeat signals to the job tracker. Next thing is, whenever work is assigned to this task trackers, these task trackers will be sending the task progress information also. So they will be sending task progress information to job tracker. Okay. So the task trackers are the working horses of the Hadoop cluster for computation. So whenever you are performing any data computations, that means running your Hadoop jobs, right? So the MapReduce jobs, your task trackers are the working horses. These are the one which are actually performing the work, all right? But again, they cannot take their own decisions of running the tasks. They should be instructed, they should be guided by a master or a coordinator. That master or coordinator is a job tracker. So whenever you submit a job, okay, so let's say for example, I'm going to run I'm going to calculate some metrics on this 1 GB of sales data. So I have written some code and I give the path of this file. Now the request will go to the job tracker. Now the job tracker will know for this 1 GB of data, there are 4 blocks. Assume that it will identify 4 task trackers. For one task tracker, it will take a block B1 available in the node 1 and apply some logic. And for another task tracker, it will tell there is a block B2 available in the node 3, take it and apply some logic. Now for the block 3, it tells again, come to the node 2 and tell to the task tracker 2 running on this node 2, take this block B3 of data and apply some logic. And say it may tell to the node 3 again, some task tracker take this block B4 and apply some logic on top of that. So this job tracker will be deciding the tasks and it will be assigning the task to the task trackers, and the task trackers will create some memory, load those blocks, load that logics into the memory, and they apply the computations. So that's why task trackers are called the working horses. And these task trackers, they will be sending a heartbeat signals to the job tracker. So with these heartbeat signals, at any given point of time, the job tracker will know what are the task trackers that are up and running. Okay. Now, these task trackers, whenever they have assigned a work or a task, they will share the task progress information to the job tracker. Now, let's say for one of the task tracker, the job tracker has told you take this block of data and process it. Now the task tracker will tell, okay, I have taken this block of data and I have processed, or I'm in progress, I'm doing that, or I'm initializing the resources. Right? Now with this information, the task tracker is sharing with the job tracker can get to know, okay, what is the status of the whole job. Now say for my job, there are 20 task trackers are running. They're taking each task one. That means there are 20 tasks are run. Some task trackers finish the work earlier. Let's say 10 of the task trackers are done. That means the 10 tasks are done and the remaining 10 tasks are running. Now the job tracker has this information. The job tracker will tell 50% of the work is done. Remaining 50% of the work has to be till to be done. So with this information, the job tracker can trace how or monitor how your job is executing, right? Same way, in the node manager, what happens, right? So node manager also will perform the same things, whatever the task manager is doing. So they just change that name, that's all. So this will node managers. So they attempt the task given by the job tracker. Here instead of job tracker, we call this as a resource manager. Okay, and here also they will send their heartbeat signals to the resource manager. Okay, and they will okay, they will send, right, send or share. They will send task progress information to the resource manager. Oh my god, here what happened? Shit. Just give me a minute. Okay, so they will be sending task progress information to the resource manager. Okay, here there will be a small correction. I'm going to tell you. First, we'll go step by step. Okay, so here the node managers are very similar to the task trackers, so which are attempting the tasks, and they will be sending a heartbeat signals, and they will be sending the task progress information, right? If you look at this one, the job tracker is responsible for coordinating the job execution in Hadoop 1.x, right? So here the resource manager is responsible for the resource management and the job schedule, and also what it will do, right? It will coordinate the job, but it don't take the full ownership. What it will do, right? It delegates, okay, the job execution to application master. In application master. So application master is a process that will be started for each and every job. Okay. Earlier in Hadoop 1.x, job tracker itself is executing each and every job itself. Job tracker itself is executing. Now what the resource manager will do, which is equivalent of a job tracker in Hadoop 2.x, is rather than resource manager involved in executing the jobs, it creating a separate process called application master, and it will delegate the job execution work to the application master. So there is again a small change in the architecture. So here, whenever we submit 10 jobs, 10 application masters will be created, and each application master will take care of one job execution. So now the application master for a given job is responsible for the job execution, and hence the node managers will be receiving the tasks from the application master. So that's why I told there is a small correction will be there. So the node manager attempts the task given by the application master, and they will be sending the task progress information to the application master. Okay, they will be sending the task progress information to the application master, whereas the heartbeat signals they will be still sending to the resource manager. So this is the roles and responsibilities of the resource manager and node manager in the Hadoop 2.x. So we have a Hadoop 1.x and we have Hadoop 2.x. So here Hadoop 1.x, we have two services called as a job tracker and a task tracker. So job tracker is the master entity and the task trackers are the worker entities. Like we have the name node and the data node. So as a job tracker, it is responsible for the resource management, scheduling the jobs, coordinating the jobs or executing the jobs and providing the job history. Now, when it comes to the Hadoop 2.x, okay, so the work of the job tracker has been divided into multiple entities. So with that, we got something called as a resource manager, which is responsible for resource management, job scheduling, and it rather than resource manager executing the jobs, it delegates the job execution to a separate process called application master. And we have created a separate entity called a job history server, which will provide the job history. So this is about the resource manager roles and responsibilities. And we have something like a task tracker in Hadoop 1.x, so which we call as a node managers Hadoop 2.x. And as a task tracker, they're responsible for attempting the tasks assigned by the job tracker. They will be sending the heartbeat signals to the job tracker and they will be sending task progress information to the job tracker. Whereas in Hadoop 2.x, so since application masters are responsible for job execution, so the node managers will receive the instructions from the application master and node managers will attempt the tasks. And these node managers will be sending the task progress information to the application master. Whereas the heartbeat signals, they will be sending to the resource manager only. Okay, so these are the roles of the different services within the Hadoop architecture. So tomorrow we'll see pictorially how we can perform a HDFS write operation, how you perform a HDFS read operation. Okay, then you can get understand what are the roles of this name node, data node, what is this FS image, what is this metadata, all these things you can get a even much better understanding from in the next class. Once that is done, then we look into the map reduce. So theoretically how a map reduce job will be executed. Okay, so by the time the free classes will be done and who will confirm the registration of this course, right? We will create a like email IDs. Then I will share you the Hadoop VM image. You can set up that. Then we can do the practicals on the HDFS. Then you can do some practicals on the MapReduce. So remember, you no need to learn anything on the MapReduce, how to write a code, okay, and how to execute also, because nowadays people are not using the MapReduce, but it's important to understand those concepts. If you understand those concepts, right, you can understand the Spark better, or you can understand any other distributed computing system better, because most of the distributed computing follows the more or less similar architecture to the Hadoop. So that's why we need to spare some time understanding how distributed file system works and how distributed computing called MapReduce in Hadoop is going to work. Okay, so is it clear with this Hadoop architecture and the rules of the different entities? Any doubts so far?
Oh, yeah, it's all good.
Hari, I have a
Okay.
small doubt.
Yeah.
Where is the application master, and where is it created? On the resource manager node or the node, I mean the data node?
No, it will be created on the data node. So data node means wherever node manager is running. Okay.
Okay, so you said that for each and every task, the resource manager will be created. But then suppose for a particular task, a given file is used, which is 1 GB, and then it is divided into 4 blocks. So it is running on 4 different data nodes.
Correct.
So it will have a copy of that application master on each and every. So for one task, there will be 4 application master copies running on 4 different
No.
data nodes.
Only one application master. Okay, so let me tell you something like this. Okay, say I want to process some sales.csv file. Now let's say this is a 1 GB file. Now let's say this has got into, let's say, 8 blocks. Okay, now let's say these 8 blocks are distributed across, let's say, some 40 node clusters. So including all these replicas and all, right? So 8 threes are, let's say, 8 threes are how much, right? 24 blocks we got it with replication, everything. Let's say mine is a 20 node cluster. So we don't have control like how these blocks are distributed. That the name node based on the usage of the HDFs, it will assign. Okay, but we know like whenever you want to process this file, this information will be provided by the data node. This information will provide with the name node. Okay, now let's say for example, okay, I'm running some report, say some weekly report. Okay, this is my, assume that this is my code, right? This weekly report is my job. Okay, and I need to run this weekly report on my entire 1 GB of data. Okay, now what happens? We have we will submit some command and all that we'll see later. Now the request will go to the resource manager. What resource manager will do? Resource manager will create a one application master. Right? Then the application master will identify, okay, how many map tasks are required, okay, and how many reducer tasks are required. So map reduce means it's a two-step process: map task and a reduce task. Let me put. So how many map tasks are required and how many reducer tasks are required. So these map tasks and reduce tasks will be running on the your data node systems or the systems where your node managers are running, because we need a containers to run these tasks, right? Now this application master is also a piece of some Java code, right? We will invoke this piece of Java code. Again, we need some memory. We need some heap memory and other stuff. So basically we need a container, right? So the node managers are providing the containers to execute the map task and the reduce task. Similarly, we can use the memory that is available on one of the node manager to run your application master. Okay, so the node managers are the one which will provide the containers. Let me put like this. NM means node managers. So these node managers provides the containers. What is the container under? Tomorrow I will tell in detail. In these containers, okay, we can run a map task, okay, or we can run a reduce task, okay, or we can run an application master process also, or we can run Spark tasks also, like this. If you're running a Spark job on top of Yarn, okay, so we can use these containers to run your Spark application task also, or we can run application master, or we can run a reduce task or a map task. Any one of these can be run. Okay, is it clear?
Yes, it is clear. Thank you.
Yeah, next class diagrammatically I will show you, then you can get a better picture. Okay,
So Ari, basically there will be only one application master running
for one process, for one job.
for
See,
one job. Okay.
yeah, if you notice some difference here, all these things are mentioned as a services. Name node as a service, data node as a service, secondary name node as a service, resource manager as a service, job history server as a service, node manager as a service, but application master is a process. What is the difference between a process and service? If any process is running continuously in the background for a long time, that is a service. But application master is a process, right? Now, if you see here, yesterday we saw, right, this is our Hadoop cluster, your one node Hadoop cluster. If you do sudo JPS, we are seeing everything here. Okay, we are seeing, let me start with the name node. We have a secondary name node, we have a data node, we have a resource manager, and we have a node manager. But if you see, there is no application master in this. Why there is no application master? Currently, there is no Hadoop job is running. Whenever you run a Hadoop job, then only an application master will be created. Let's say I have started one Hive script, one pig script, one MapReduce program, another MapReduce program. So total, let's say all these four becomes a 4 Hadoop jobs, 4 MapReduce jobs. So for each of this MapReduce job, one application master will be created. When your jobs are running, at that time, if you view sudo JPS, then you can see application master coming up here. Got it? So for one application, for, so when you say one job or one application, right? One Hadoop job or a Hadoop application, one application master will be created. This application master per job. Okay, is it clear?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Again, there is some drawback in the Hadoop 1.x. What is the drawback? Means whatever the containers that are providing by the task trackers in Hadoop 1.x, we can run only map task and reduce tasks only. The way Hadoop 1.x was designed, we were not able to run another tasks, okay, like Spark tasks or other any distributed computing tasks. Okay, we were not able to run. Okay, it is the way it was designed, only MapReduce jobs only can be done. Now they have rewritten this MapReduce framework, right? And they decoupled this roles and responsibilities, right? With that, what they made, right? So they made the node manager to provide a container. Within that container, you can run anything. You can run a map task, you can run a reduce task, or you can run an application master, or you can run some Spark related tasks, or you can run some MPP architecture related tasks. Again, MPP architecture is some other distributed computing framework. So those related tasks also we can run. So now with this redesign, okay, it became more flexible and it became like a more open to run different kinds of distributed workloads on the Hadoop cluster itself. Okay, in Hadoop 1.x, there is a reservation of the containers. Okay, so like I mentioned, right, let's say in each of the node, okay, I got like a 64 GB of RAM, right? Out of this 64 GB, let's say 32 GB we are assigning to the operating system to run some services and other things, and 32 GB, okay, let's say I can use for Hadoop applications. Say for Hadoop apps I can use, right? Now this 32 GB of RAM memory resources are available for me to process my data. Now out of this 32 GB, let's say my container size, okay, is 512 MB, 512 MB, right? Now with this 32 GB of RAM available, how many containers I can get? Now let's say now it is a 32 GB, okay, so divided by 512 MB. Okay, so this will get around 64 containers. That means on one node we are able to get 64 containers, right? Now within these 64 containers in Hadoop 1.x, there are some configurations such that we are reserving the we are doing a reservation. Let's say out of this 64, 32 containers, okay, we can use to run map tasks only. Okay, and we can use the remaining 32 containers to run reduced tasks only. Okay, so now again you have to understand this one. You need to know what is a map task and reduced task. But let's assume that is like a map task is like a selection kind of well, like one-to-one transformations, and reduced tasks are like aggregations, like a group by tasks. Okay, so now some of the queries we are running or some of the transformations we are running, let's say are just one-to-one transformations. There are no aggregations involved. When there are no aggregations involved, there are 32 containers which are available in each node, but still we are not using them because they are reserved to run only the reduced tasks. Okay, I want to run a job, say which requires let's say some 80 containers. Now say I have like a 4 node, like a 3 node Hadoop cluster. So out of 3 node, already say some other jobs are running. So only 32 containers I can use from each of the system to run my map tasks. But the number of map tasks are more. But there are some free memory also. Remaining 32 containers are free, but we are not using them because this is how the Hadoop 1.x was designed. So now what happened, right? In Hadoop 2.x, these 64 containers, whatever available from each node, okay, we can use this container for any of the tasks. So this reservation was removed. So we can run a map task, we can use it, or we can use it to run a reduced task, or we can use it to run a application master. A means application master process, or can use to run any Spark tasks, or we can use any distributed computing tasks like any other distributed computing task, like etc. We can run. So that is the advantage with the Hadoop 2.x. This is like a faulty design in Hadoop 1.x. They have corrected in the Hadoop 2.x. Okay, is that clear? Is it clear, guys? Any doubts so far? So just, yeah, go ahead.
It's clear. It's clear.
Okay, now just bear in another 2 days. Okay, you will get a very good understanding of the Hadoop. So Hadoop as a framework, like when it comes to programming, learning, the concepts are very interesting and very easy to learn. But initially, like I told, right, we need to learn in a pieces. Then once we arrange those pieces together, we'll get a complete picture. We'll get a very good understanding. Okay, so tomorrow I will show you like how a like what is a HDFS architecture, like what are the how we are going to rewrite the data. All these things I will show you. Then you can get a even good picture of that, how the replications will happen, right? What is the block size, how the division will happen, why the block size has to be this one, why the replication has to be this, how we can set the replication, where are those configurations are there, how the HDFS file write option will be there, how the read operation will happen. All these things we will see. I have all the slides, everything ready. So I thought of showing it today, but let's say initially we'll keep these classes to 1.5 hours. Slowly we can make it to 2 hours on them so that we can get it better. Okay. So again, for MapReduce also all the diagrams, everything is there. Once we see them, you'll get a good understanding. Okay, so that's all for today. If you have any doubts, stay back and feel free to ask. Otherwise, we can wind up for today.